know this happened to you. Maybe not yesterday. Maybe not in a way that left scars on your skin. But I'm sure, somewhere, sometime, you felt it. That tightness in your chest. That slow, rising heat behind your eyes. Your heartbeat racing, with words that never got to be spoken. You were in the middle of something. An argument. A moment. Or maybe just one of those quiet social scenes where someone says something subtle, sharp, humiliating. And for a split second, your entire body lit up with truth. You knew exactly what you wanted to say. You knew how to end it, how to defend yourself, how to unleash everything you had kept locked inside. But then, you paused. You hesitated. Because deep down, a voice you didn't choose whispered, if you explode, you'll be the problem. If you raise your voice, you'll be the one they call crazy. If you show your anger, they won't see the truth. They'll only see the mess. So you didn't scream. You didn't cry. You didn't speak. You adjusted your tone. You softened your words. You smiled like it didn't hurt. You stayed calm because being calm was the only way to be believed. And maybe later, you cried in the bathroom, or cursed yourself in the mirror, or laid awake at night replaying the whole thing, hinking of all the better things you should have said. But the moment passed. And the anger? You swallowed it, like you always do. You told yourself it wasn't worth it. You told yourself you were being mature, graceful, composed. But part of you still wonders what would have happened if you had let it out. If you hadn't played the part of the reasonable woman. If you hadn't been the good girl. And I need you to hear this. You weren't wrong for feeling what you felt. You weren't dramatic. You weren't too sensitive. You were just taught that anger is dangerous, especially yours, because when a woman gets angry, the world doesn't ask, what happened to her? It asks, what's wrong with her? So you learned to hold it in, to package your pain in politeness, to protect other people from your fire, even when they were the ones who lit it. This is not weakness. This is not you failing to stand up for yourself. This is conditioning. This is survival. This is what happens when you grow up in a world that tells you, be likable, be nice, be quiet, over and over and over. But silence is not peace, and smiling is not healing. And the rage you buried never left. It waits, still burning, beneath the surface, still yours. And the question that brought you here today, the one I know you've asked in those quiet, aching moments alone, is simple. What would happen if I stopped being good and finally let myself be real? And maybe the most painful part is that this didn't start with some dramatic betrayal. It didn't take trauma or violence to teach you to silence yourself. It started in small, almost invisible ways. Tiny moments, simple phrases, looks, expectations. You weren't born afraid of your voice. You were trained to distrust it. It began when you were still a child. You probably don't even remember the first time it happened. Maybe you were just being loud, excited, passionate, and someone told you to calm down. Maybe you were upset and tried to explain, but your tears were called a tantrum. Or maybe you were angry about something real, something unfair, and they didn't ask why. They told you to stop being difficult, to smile, to be nice, to let it go. And you did. Because you wanted to be good. You wanted to be loved. And somewhere deep down, without even realizing it, you started to believe that approval came with a price. That love was earned by shrinking. That acceptance was only given to girls who didn't take up too much space. You didn't stop feeling anger. You just stopped letting it show. And with every moment you silenced yourself, that anger went somewhere else. It didn't disappear. It sank. It folded inward. It became quiet resentment. It became shame. It became the voice in your head that says, don't overreact. Don't make it worse. Don't be that girl. You were praised for being well-behaved, for not talking back, for letting things slide. And maybe, at the time, that praise felt good. Maybe it still does. But now you're here, exhausted, stretched thin, and wondering why you feel so far away from who you really are. The truth is, you didn't lose your voice. It was slowly trained out of you. So you became adaptable, pleasant, accommodating. You learned how to sense the mood in the room and adjust accordingly. You avoided conflict not because you were weak, but because you were raised to believe that harmony matters more than honesty, that being kind matters more than being real. And the cost of all this is subtle, but devastating. Because you didn't just disconnect from your anger, you disconnected from your instincts, from your power, from your boundaries. You stopped trusting the part of you that knows when something's not right. And now, maybe you can't even tell the difference between discomfort and danger, between being nice and being numb. This is where it all begins. Not with malice, but with a girl learning that silence is safer than truth. What happens to the anger that doesn't get to be expressed? What happens when you bite your tongue so often it becomes instinct? When you smooth things over so many times that you forget what you actually wanted to say? It doesn't disappear, it transforms. And for many women, it turns into something far more difficult to name: anxiety. Not the kind of anxiety that makes headlines, not panic attacks or loud meltdowns, though that can come later. No, it starts quieter than that. It shows up as tension in the body, constant overthinking, a racing mind that won't stop scanning for the next thing that could go wrong. It's the voice that won't shut up, the one that second guesses everything you say, everything you do, everything you feel. You replay conversations in your head. You analyze your tone. You wonder if you should have said less, or more, or nothing at all. This anxiety is not random. It's what happens when the body has been trained to suppress its most honest reactions. When your natural instinct to push back, to stand up, to protect yourself gets short-circuited over and over again, your nervous system doesn't relax. It adapts. It becomes hypervigilant. Because if you can't fight, your only option is to anticipate, to control, to please. And that performance, that endless adjusting of yourself to meet the comfort of others, it comes with a cost. You become exhausted, but can't rest. You become resentful, but can't express it. You feel the weight of emotions that never had a place to go, so they settle in your chest, in your stomach, in the knots in your back, in the clenched jaw you carry through the night. You look calm, composed, high-functioning. Maybe you even take pride in that. But underneath, there's a scream that's been muffled for years. And the hardest part, you start to believe this is just who you are, that you're just the anxious one, the overthinker, the emotional one. You start to believe that your nervous system is broken, that your emotions are flawed. But what if this isn't a flaw? If this is just what happens when someone has been taught to mute their truth so thoroughly, for so long, that the body starts expressing what the voice never could. You smile in meetings while your insides twist. You nod in conversations you don't agree with. You swallow your feelings with your morning coffee and carry them like bricks through your day. You become the one everyone can count on. The responsible one, the chill one, the friend who always understands. But no one sees what happens when the door closes. The silence that's too loud. The breakdowns that come with no warning. The numbness that creeps in when you've been too strong for too long. You're not unstable. You're unexpressed. You are full of emotions that were never allowed to see the light. And so they find other ways to move through you, as tension, as burnout, as shutdown, as that crushing anxiety that makes you question your own reality. Even when something in your gut is screaming that you're right to be angry, that you're right to be tired, that you're right to want more. This is not just anxiety. It is anger, reshaped into something more acceptable, more feminine, more quiet. But just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's not screaming. But if this isn't just anxiety, if this is something deeper, older, angrier, then why can't we name it? Why is it still so hard to say, "I'm angry," without immediately following it with guilt or apology? Psychologist Harriet Lerner spent years exploring that question. In her groundbreaking book, The Dance of Anger, She called out what so many women feel but have no words for, that we are not taught how to use anger. We are taught how to fear it, not just in others, but in ourselves. She noticed something essential, something hidden in plain sight. That when a man expresses anger, it's seen as powerful, assertive, decisive. But when a woman expresses the exact same emotion, it's called dramatic, hysterical, overreacting, difficult. So we internalize that message. We start to believe that our anger is not just dangerous, it's embarrassing. And over time, we stop recognizing it for what it is. We give it new names: stress, fatigue, anxiety, overwhelm. Lerner described it as a dance. Because we don't confront our anger, we orbit around it, we bury it, we redirect it, we smile through it, we snap in places where it doesn't belong, and we stay silent where it's begging to be spoken. It becomes a loop we live inside of. Anger, guilt, shame, repeat. But the real tragedy isn't just that the anger remains unspoken, it's that it turns inward, into self-blame, into perfectionism, into the constant need to prove that we're not the problem. We overachieve, we over-explain, we over-accommodate. And beneath all of it is a truth we've been taught to hide, that we are furious, and we don't know how to be with that feeling without losing everything we've been taught to be. Harriet Lerner didn't see anger as the enemy. She saw it as a compass, a powerful internal guide pointing us toward what isn't working, what's been crossed, what needs to change. But that compass only works if we learn to trust it, if we stop dancing around it, if we finally, after a lifetime of rehearsed silence, decide to listen. But once you understand that anger isn't the problem, and that the fear of it has shaped your entire emotional world, you start to see the performance for what it is. You start to feel the tension behind your own smile. And you begin to realize this mask you've been wearing, the one called peaceful, the one called nice, the one called easy to be around, it's not who you are. It's who you became to survive. There's a certain kind of woman the world loves. She's calm, composed, agreeable. She listens more than she speaks. She forgives quickly. She diffuses conflict, even when she didn't create it. She's the peacekeeper, the emotional anchor, the one who never makes anything worse. People admire her, praise her. They call her mature. They call her graceful. But what they don't see, what she barely allows herself to admit, is the storm happening under her skin. Because no one taught her what to do with her anger, except to hide it. So she learned to perform peace. She learned to stay soft when she wanted to scream. She learned to nod when she wanted to say no. And over time, she learned to disconnect entirely from the part of her that feels things strongly. Not because she stopped feeling, but because it was safer not to. She says, "I'm fine on autopilot." She says, "It's not a big deal," even when it is. She apologizes before she speaks, even when she's the one who's been hurt. And slowly, she becomes unrecognizable to others and to herself. That performance becomes her identity. The good woman, the strong one, the one who's always okay. And the irony is, she's never been further from being okay. There's a kind of loneliness that lives in this role, a specific ache that comes from being admired for a version of yourself that isn't real. People tell you how reliable you are, how composed, how selfless, but no one sees the breakdown that happens when you're alone, the nights where you can't sleep, where your chest feels heavy, where you feel like you're suffocating in your own kindness, the way your body shakes when you finally let yourself cry, because you've been holding it in for weeks. You've become an expert in managing other people's emotions. But yours don't even feel like yours anymore. You've spent so long trying not to be a burden that you don't even know what it feels like to be honest. To say, "That hurt." To say, "I'm angry." To say, "I need something right now, and I'm not ashamed of it." Because somewhere along the way, you confused being easy to love with being silent. And that's the quiet tragedy of it all. That the woman who worked so hard to keep everyone else comfortable slowly disappeared in the process. That the price of being likable was authenticity. That the cost of keeping the peace was herself. And maybe the most unsettling part is that she doesn't even know when the performance started. Because for many women, this role doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins in girlhood. Long before we realize what's being asked of us, before we have language for shame or silence, before we understand what we're giving up, we learn to make ourselves smaller in exchange for something that feels like safety. Psychologist Carl Gilligan spent decades studying this shift. The exact moment girls begin to abandon their inner voice. What she found was heartbreaking, but not surprising. That around adolescence, girls start trading truth for connection. They begin to lie, not in dramatic ways, not with bad intentions, but in subtle, habitual ones. They lie by nodding, by staying quiet, by laughing at things that aren't funny. They lie to others, and eventually, to themselves. Because they learn quickly that in this world, being liked is survival, and nothing threatens being liked more than honesty. Gilligan showed us that girls are taught that their anger, their opinions, their discomfort, all of it is risky. That to keep relationships intact, they need to smooth things over. And so they begin to filter every emotion through one haunting question. Will this make someone pull away from me? That question becomes the lens. Will this make me too intense? Will they still love me if I say this out loud? Will I be too much, too needy, too angry? And slowly, they stop asking what they feel and start asking what will make them belong. The voice inside them, the one that used to be loud and instinctive, begins to quiet. Until one day, it's just an echo, distant, blurry, unfamiliar. That's the cost of choosing connection over truth. Yes, you might stay included, but at what cost? Because you can't have intimacy without honesty. And if you've built your entire life on being liked instead of being known, then no one, not even you, really knows who you are anymore. And when you've spent years silencing your truth just to be accepted, something strange begins to happen. You don't just hide emotions, you lose access to them. You no longer know the difference between what you feel and what you're supposed to feel. You smile on command, you say what's expected. You become a polished version of yourself. Polite, controlled, pleasant. But underneath that polish, something else lives. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden, unacknowledged side of the self. The parts we were taught to reject, abandon, or fear. And for women, especially those raised to be good, that shadow is often made of everything they were told not to be. Angry, assertive, demanding, unapologetic. These aren't flaws. These are the parts of you that were labeled unlovable, and so they were buried. But Jung warned, the shadow doesn't disappear just because we deny it. It waits, in silence, in the unconscious, in the parts of the body that carry tightness you can't explain, in the flash of rage that rises suddenly, then disappears before you can understand it, in the resentment you can't shake, even when you're trying to be understanding, in the meltdown that seems to come out of nowhere, except it didn't. It came from years of, I'm fine. The woman who never learned how to express anger will eventually express it anyway. Not with words, but with illness, with exhaustion, with depression, with the slow erosion of her joy, because emotion that is not allowed to move will always find another way out. And when it does, it doesn't always look like rage. It looks like burnout, like numbness, like the slow, quiet loss of passion and aliveness. You think you're broken, but you're not. You're just full of unspoken truths that your body can no longer carry alone. And here's the part most people miss. The shadow is not your enemy. It's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to return you to yourself. The rage, the fire, the parts of you that you locked away, They're not dangerous. They're powerful. They're your boundaries, your instincts, your voice. They were never meant to be destroyed. When the good girl finally breaks, it's not a breakdown. It's an awakening. The shadow doesn't just wait. It collects, like a library of every time you stayed silent. That monster inside isn't here to burn everything down. It's here to burn everything false, everything performative, everything that kept you small and obedient and quiet. It's not here to destroy you. It's here to destroy the version of you that was built to be accepted at the cost of your truth. And when you finally stop running from her, when you turn around and look at that shadow, you'll realize she's not a monster at all. She's you, the version of you that never got permission to exist. Until now. But the shadow doesn't stay quiet forever. At some point, the cost of pretending becomes unbearable, and the woman who has spent her life avoiding conflict, managing everyone else's comfort, keeping her voice small to stay safe, she begins to slip, not because she wants to, but because the mask no longer fits. It starts subtly. She stops replying to messages that drain her. She cancels plans she used to force herself to keep. She's no longer willing to say yes just to avoid the awkwardness of no. And then one day, maybe in a meeting, maybe at dinner, maybe in a moment that seems completely ordinary, she snaps, or walks out, or goes silent in a way that makes the room feel cold. To others, it looks like a meltdown, sudden, irrational, out of character. But that's only because no one noticed the years of small betrayals she committed against herself, just to keep the illusion alive. She wasn't fine. She was faking. She wasn't calm. She was suppressing. And now her system can't keep playing along. So she breaks pattern. She stops explaining. She walks away from the friendship where she always had to shrink. She ends the relationship that looked perfect in pictures, but left her feeling empty in private. She sets boundaries where there used to be silence. And suddenly, she's changed. But she didn't change. She stopped performing. That moment, messy as it may look, is not collapse. It's emergence. It's the moment when the real self, the one buried under decades of people-pleasing and emotional labor, finally claws her way to the surface. And no, she's not polished, she's not graceful, she's not easy to be around, but she's real, and for the first time in years, that's enough. And after the mask cracks, after the fallout, after the silence, after the people around you start to shift and ask, what's going on with her? Something unexpected happens. There's a moment, small and quiet, where you feel a flicker of something you haven't felt in years. Clarity. It doesn't come with ease. It doesn't arrive as peace. It comes with grief, with regret, with a strange disorientation as you realize how long you've been gone from yourself. But under all that rubble, beneath the anger and the fear and the exhaustion, is something solid, something real, something that knows exactly where you are and where you've been violated again and again. That something is your anger, because maybe anger was never the enemy. Maybe it wasn't a flaw in your personality or a stain on your femininity. Maybe it was the most honest part of you all along. The compass, the signal, the voice that stayed alive inside you even when everything else went quiet. Anger shows up when your boundaries have been crossed, when your value has been dismissed, when your needs have been ignored for the 100th time and you've run out of ways to justify it. It's not there to destroy. It's there to reveal. But we were never taught to read anger as wisdom. We were taught to treat it like fire. Dangerous, unpredictable, shameful. Something that makes people uncomfortable. Something to put out quickly, before it burns anyone. But not all fire is destructive. Some fire is sacred. There is a kind of rage that doesn't want revenge. It wants resurrection. It wants truth. It wants freedom. It wants to stop pretending. And when you listen closely, really listen, you realize your anger doesn't make you broken. It proves you are awake. It proves that somewhere in you, despite everything you were told, there's still a part that refuses to accept disrespect. A part that says, I deserve better than this. A part that knows, this is not okay. This is not love. This is not peace. That voice, the one rising up after years of silence, it isn't too loud. It isn't dangerous. It's yours. It belongs to you. And it might be the only thing that can lead you back to yourself. Because healing isn't about becoming softer, quieter, easier to be around. Sometimes healing looks like fire, like finally standing in your own heat, like letting the discomfort of truth burn through the performance of being okay. And when you stop trying to tame it, when you stop labeling your anger as too much or too intense, and instead ask what is it trying to protect, you'll see it for what it really is: a boundary, a warning, a guide. Your anger isn't the thing to get rid of, it's the thing that's been trying to bring you home. And then there comes a shift. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's quiet, almost unnoticeable to the outside world. But inside, it changes everything. Because one day, you realize you're no longer performing. You're no longer filtering every word through fear. You're no longer shrinking your presence to be easier to love. You begin to speak, not to provoke, not to defend, but because your voice finally belongs to you. You stop over-explaining. You say no without guilt. You say yes only when you mean it. You don't rehearse your boundaries, you live them. You are no longer trying to be liked. You are trying to be honest. And what they once called rage, you now understand as clarity. That edge in your voice is not a threat, it's direction. That tension in your body is not dysfunction, it's wisdom. That refusal to carry other people's comfort while abandoning your own, that's not selfish. That's sacred. You're no longer chasing the illusion of being good. You've outgrown it. Because good was never about you. It was about control, and you are done being controlled. Now, you're not trying to fix your anger. You're learning how to listen to it, to hold it, to trust it, to move through the world without apologizing for what you feel. You don't explode. You don't suppress. You integrate, and that is where your power lives, not in being pleasant, but in being whole. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be real. And finally, you are. If something in this video felt familiar, if it echoed something you've lived, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment and share the moment you stayed silent, when you wanted to scream. Your story might be the mirror someone else needs. And if this spoke to you, helped you, or simply made you feel seen, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help us bring more voices out of the quiet.